The long-awaited sequel to the all-women's WWE Evolution pay-per-view from 2018 is a little under a month away from taking place on July 13th, 2025 from Atlanta, Georgia. But before we get there, let's get into the proverbial time machine and discuss the lead-up to the original Evolution pay-per-view and where everyone that performed on that card is at today in 2025. The world of professional wrestling wasn't entirely kind to women's wrestlers for an embarrassingly long period of time. The advent of NXT as a developmental brand for WWE and, believe it or not, yes, Total Divas, helped push the women's division of WWE up to an equal level playing field with their counterparts on the men's roster. While companies like TNA proudly displayed their Knockouts division and women-centric companies like Shimmer and Stardom existed at the time of the first Evolution pay-per-view, WWE was and still remains the most popular professional wrestling organization around the world. So whenever they do something, it tends to get noticed by a far wider audience. But it was in 2018 when things finally started to pick up steam for women's wrestlers contracted to World Wrestling Entertainment. Just about 7 years ago, the inventor of women, Stephanie McMahon, publicly announced on an episode of Raw that an all-women's show would take place 3 months later.
And that event, I am privileged to announce, will be the first ever all-women's pay-per-view.
This pay-per-view would become to be known as WWE Evolution. At this point in time in WWE's history, NXT was considered the premier place to go for independent wrestling's biggest stars. The Kevin Steens and Tyler Blacks of the world cut their teeth in WWE through NXT, now known as Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins respectively. While Ring of Honor and New Japan were big staples in the not WWE realm at the time, women on the independent circuit didn't have as much notoriety outside of WWE as their male counterparts. NXT would house the, pardon the pun, evolution of independent wrestlers Rebecca Quinn, Mercedes KV, Brittany Knight, and Davina Rose. Of course, you'll know them much better by their WWE names Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Paige, and Bayley. But NXT wasn't just where the top independent wrestlers went to wrestle. It was also where new and aspiring wrestlers also went, and this included the likes of Charlotte Flair, Bianca Belair, and Tiffany Stratton being developed from scratch in the NXT ecosystem. NXT had been a huge success at this time and was a big asset to the evolution of women's wrestling in WWE. Shortly after Stephanie's announcement on Raw, WWE would go on to announce something known as the Mae Young Classic, which was a 32-woman tournament featuring independent women wrestlers and some of the young upstarts WWE had already signed. And at the time of the Evolution pay-per-view, this would be the second Mae Young Classic. We'll go over the Mae Young Classic in a similar fashion in a future video, but in relation to the Evolution pay-per-view, the finals of the 2018 version of the Mae Young Classic would face off at the pay-per-view to be held in October of 2018. Alongside the finals of the Mae Young Classic featuring Stars of Tomorrow, we'd also see some past stars involved in the Evolution pay-per-view and build-up. This included the likes of Hall of Famers like Trish Stratus, Lita, and Alundra Blaze. But we have a long card to get through, so without further ado, WWE Evolution, where are they now? Right off the rip, I do want to mention that we will do our best to avoid spoilers, despite this being an event that happened 7 years ago. I do this in an attempt to give brand new viewers into wrestling a chance to watch this event at their own leisure and enjoy the event as we did when it aired live. Now, usually in these types of videos, we would avoid talking about dark matches because, well, they never took place on television, but considering one of the participants at Evolution, I think it's worth mentioning. As we touched on already, NXT was incredibly successful to this point. So much so that WWE had a spin-off of NXT in the United Kingdom, aptly named NXT UK. In the dark match for WWE Evolution, the crowd in New York saw Dakota Kai challenging for the NXT UK Women's Championship against then champion Rhea Ripley. In 2025, Rhea Ripley is arguably one of WWE's biggest stars in the entire company. Her popularity has begun to transcend WWE with an increasingly growing social media presence, but in the year 2018, she was still finding her footing as a WWE superstar. If you're a fan of WWE, you absolutely need no introduction into who Rhea Ripley is. In fact, you may be a wrestling fan because of Rhea, just like my fiance, so her importance to WWE can't be understated. From her incredibly unique look, her in-ring presence, and her otherworldly charisma, Mommy was just getting started in 2018. And if you want a cool look into the early career of a future WrestleMania main eventer and multiple-time world champion, there's no better place to start than this era. Her opponent, Dakota Kai, unfortunately has not been as lucky. While Dakota did hold a victory against Rhea in the Mae Young Classic a year prior, Dakota's time in WWE from this point on would see its extreme share of ups and downs. 4 months after the Evolution pay-per-view, Dakota Kai suffered a torn ACL, which took her out of action for 9 months. And as we noted, the extreme share of ups and downs would swing in the other direction, as not long after her return, one of the most memorable heel turns in recent history was of Dakota's own doing when she attacked her then tag team partner Tegan Nox in the War Games holding cell. She would be released a couple years later, but only for a few months when she made her return alongside Bayley and the former Io Shirai at SummerSlam 2022. She was a mainstay on the main roster from that point on as a member of Damage Control, but found herself on the wrong side of injuries every year after her main roster debut. She suffered an ACL tear once more in May of 2023. In August 2024, she would get a torn meniscus, and then earlier this year in January, she also suffered a concussion. Dakota would be one of several cuts made just last month in May of 2025, as she is no longer with WWE and currently not wrestling. The main card of the WWE Evolution pay-per-view started off with two of the biggest names in women's wrestling history, Trish Stratus and Lita. And this was apropos considering they are arguably the pioneers in WWE of women's wrestling beginning to be taken seriously. Sure, after they left, it became quite clear that Vince McMahon didn't think his audience cared about women wrestling, but many of the stars of today cite Trish and Lita as their biggest influence into getting into pro wrestling. Initially, Trish was going to be wrestling Alexa Bliss and Lita would wrestle Mickie James in separate matches, but this would eventually turn into a tag team match featuring Alexa and Mickie teaming up against Trish and Lita. However, that would get changed again due to Alexa suffering a concussion, and Alicia Fox would be the one to replace Alexa in the tag match. Alexa would remain ringside during the pay-per-view itself, however. Trish and Lita, like Rhea, you probably already know where they stand today. They are Hall of Famers and were even at the time of this pay-per-view. I don't know this immediately offhand, but this may be the very first time women Hall of Famers wrestled after being inducted. Both Trish and Lita are no longer wrestling, but have in recent history been in the mix with the stars of today. Both Lita and Trish shared the same tag team championship reign with Becky Lynch in 2023. This would coincide with Trish's heel turn and eventual feud with Becky Lynch. Trish has been a little more present than Lita, having appeared in this year's Royal Rumble and in a tag team match with Tiffany Stratton at Elimination Chamber in Toronto this year, in a winning effort against Nia Jax and Candice LeRae. As for their opponents, they are also no longer a part of the in-ring action in WWE anymore. Alicia Fox had a surprisingly long tenure in WWE that even shocked me during some of my research. She spent 17 years with WWE, spanning from 2006 all the way until 2023, when she announced she was no longer with the company. She spent some time in the independent circuit after leaving WWE, even wrestling her first singles match in 4 years against her partner at Evolution, Mickie James, in which Alicia won, and she was also wrestling under her new ring name at the time, Vix Crow. Her time on the Indies also included a victory over current NXT superstar Jordynne Grace. But more recently, she has signed with current partner promotion of WWE TNA, appearing under her real name Victoria Crawford. She wrestled in a losing effort against Masha Slamovich for the Knockouts Championship and currently serves as the Deputy Director of Authority. Her partner Mickie James was and is a far more prominent figure in wrestling history. While longtime WWE fans may most remember Mickie for her time as Trish's stalker nearly 20 years ago, Mickie could arguably be viewed in a similar light in TNA's Knockout division, much like the four horsewomen are looked at in WWE. Mickie not only won the WWE Women's Championship 6 times, she also won the TNA Knockouts Championship 5 times. Mickie's had incredible bouts with the likes of Deonna Purrazzo, Giselle Shaw, and Serena Deeb throughout her TNA tenure. Mickie more or less is essentially retired at this point, only having wrestled in 1 match this year. She's married to SmackDown general manager Nick Aldis and was most recently featured as one of the legends on WWE LFG, a mixed reality show featuring WWE developmental talent and legends. She's being replaced by Michelle McCool in the second season, which is just days away from premiering as of this video's recording on June 19th. People think Undertaker big leagued her and got his wife on the show, but you can make that argument in the comments below. The next match features our biggest collection of wrestlers, as it features a 20-women battle royal, in which the winner would be granted a future women's championship match. This featured a collection of current stars and legends. Believe it or not, a lot of these talents still remain with WWE today, and only one of these wrestlers are currently with WWE's biggest competitor, All Elite Wrestling. This is a lot, so we'll get through these as quick as we can. If this video was made a month ago, we would mention the Iconics Peyton Royce and Billie Kay have rarely been seen. However, literally just a couple weeks ago, they returned to TNA confronting Heather by Elegance and the next person on this list. Dana Brooke, currently wrestling as Ash by Elegance in TNA, is one half of the current TNA Knockout Tag Team Champions with her partner that we just mentioned, Heather by Elegance. Next up is WWE Hall of Famer Molly Holly. This Battle Royal was her third most recent wrestling appearance, as she has only appeared in 2 Royal Rumbles since this Battle Royal. Molly is largely retired at this point. Kelly Kelly's next on our list and has the exact same last 3 matches Molly Holly had. The 2022 and 2020 Royal Rumbles and this Battle Royal. Earlier in 2018, she was also in that Royal Rumble as well after having last wrestled in 2012. Kelly Kelly, however, is back in the news as earlier this year, she signed a Legends deal with WWE and just last month made an appearance with TNA at Border Brawl. Also in the Battle Royal is another Hall of Famer in Tori Wilson. And you're not going to believe the last 3 matches she's had. I'm just kidding. She did share the ring with Kelly Kelly during the 2018 Royal Rumble though, but she appeared in the 2021 version of the match unlike our last 2 wrestlers. Tori has been retired for a long time now and has only made sporadic non-wrestling appearances for WWE, most recently appearing as a part of the WWE draft last year announcing draft picks. Next up is Sonya Deville, someone who I was certainly bullish on, but unfortunately WWE was less so. After an ACL injury in the Doomed from the Start group known as the Pure Fusion Collective, Sonya's time with WWE ended in February of 2025 when her contract did not get renewed. Her most recent appearance was performing commentary for the women's MMA group currently owned by TNA's parent company Anthem, known as Invicta Fighting Championships. WWE Hall of Famer Alundra Blaze, or more popularly remembered as Medusa, made her final in-ring appearance in this 20-women Battle Royal, unless we count her interactions with the 24/7 Championship, which I certainly do not. Anyway, this Battle Royal was her first in-ring appearance in WWE since 1995. And for my money, I'd wager to guess she had the longest gap in between matches in WWE history on the women's side of the roster, which was 23 years. She's also made sporadic WWE appearances and even an AEW appearance since this Battle Royal, but recently served as a producer for the NWA and has even dipped her toes into refereeing. Longtime wrestling veteran Maria Kanellis was also part of this Battle Royal. Her wrestling days at this point are behind her, but she recently ran her own women's wrestling promotion known as Women's Wrestling Army, and before leaving in January 2025, she was contracted with AEW, most notably appearing on the Ring of Honor television show, managing Cole Carter and Griff Garrison.
The hair!
This is Griff Garrison!
Whoa, who the fuck is Griff Garrison?
This is Griff Garrison!
Lana also made an appearance in the Battle Royal, spending the most notable portion of her career as the manager of Rusev. Lana began to wrestle a few years into her time on the main roster for WWE. She had one of the weirdest runs in AEW, leaving after less than a year with the company. Currently, she's re-signed with WWE in April, around the same time her husband Rusev also returned. She's currently under a Legends deal, but is yet to make an appearance since leaving AEW. Up next is Mandy Rose, and while she spent time on the main roster and had her most notable storyline involving her romance with Otis, her most prominent role in the company was as the long-reigning champion in NXT. Her reign went for 413 days into 2022 and would have probably gone on longer, but she was released due to a certain subscription page she hosted. And since her release, she has continued being an influencer in that realm and seemingly is not looking at returning to the world of pro wrestling. Recent Hall of Famer Michelle McCool was also included in this Battle Royal. We're going to touch on what she'll be doing in the extremely near future. Just a few days from this recording, she'll be joining the cast of WWE's LFG mixed reality show alongside her husband, The Undertaker, and other WWE legends. Current Money in the Bank briefcase holder Naomi was included in this battle royal as well. I'd argue to say that Naomi has had her best run as a character by far, and it isn't even close. Naomi spent nearly her entire career in WWE, save for the year or so that herself and Sasha Banks walked out of WWE. Naomi added the TNA Knockouts Championship to her trophy case, but is firmly back in WWE and in the main event mix. The same, however, can't be said for our next entrant, Carmella. She was officially released from her WWE contract earlier this year, but is currently enjoying motherhood as her and WWE announcer Corey Graves are expecting their second child together. Ivory has largely been retired from pro wrestling since 2006, but appeared in this Battle Royal and the 2022 Royal Rumble, having arguably one of the biggest pops of the night from my living room when she returned with her right to censor gimmick. That entrant made her the oldest female competitor to ever enter in the Royal Rumble, but nowadays has largely stayed out of the spotlight. Asuka was also in this Battle Royal and literally just 4 days ago made her return to WWE after over a year out due to injury. She is currently competing in the Queen of the Ring tournament and will face Alexa Bliss in the semifinals on June 23rd. Naomi is a member of the Bloodline by marriage through Jimmy Uso, but Tamina, the next Battle Royal entrant, is a member of the Bloodline the traditional way. While she is still signed to WWE, she is no longer a member of the active roster, with her last match being in 2023. While specifics aren't necessarily public, it's believed she served in a backstage role at this time. Currently, the only WWE champion inside the Battle Royal, Zelina Vega, is up next. She currently wrestles on the SmackDown brand and is the second and current Women's United States Champion. The third member of the Anawahi Maivia bloodline featured in this match is Nia Jax. Nia is the most recent former WWE Women's Champion, having lost the title to current champion Tiffany Stratton. Like Zelina and Naomi, she is currently over on the SmackDown brand. And last but not least, as referenced at the beginning of this match, is AEW's only competitor in this Battle Royal, Ember Moon, or as she is currently known as, Athena. Athena is the Forever Women's Ring of Honor champion. Athena has held the ROH Championship since December of 2022, and as of this video's recording, sits at 922 days and counting. Our next match for WWE Evolution is certainly one I would love to revisit in 2025, pitting current AEW Women's World Champion Toni Storm and current WWE Women's World Champion Io Sky, who is going by the name Io Shirai at this point in time. This match was to determine the winner of the 2018 Mae Young Classic. And while I've literally uttered their exact current status, let's time capsule this and add a little more context to Toni and Io's current story. AEW at this point in time is just weeks away from their biggest show of the year, All In, which is taking place in Texas. Though Toni Storm broke onto the scene in a big way through this match we are retrospectively discussing here, she's broke through the proverbial glass ceiling in the last couple of years, wrestling under the timeless Toni Storm gimmick. A throwback to a Marilyn Monroe type character, Toni is viewed as one of AEW's main attractions, and certainly its most popular female competitor. Toni is currently in the midst of her AEW record-breaking 4th World Championship reign and will be defending the championship at All In against one of the women we will discuss in our next match, the former Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné. Across the ring from Toni at Evolution was Io Sky, wrestling then as Io Shirai. Io has proven time and time again, bell to bell, that she is quite possibly one of, if not the best female wrestler in the game today. In 2022, Io made her return to WWE after an injury kept her out of action, when she joined the returning Dakota Kai to form Damage Control with Bayley that we discussed earlier. Her return came with a name change from Io Shirai to Io Sky, and since then has been a mainstay in the women's main event scene, having become a 2-time world champion, including defeating both Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair at WrestleMania a couple months ago. She's currently, as noted, in her first reign as Women's World Champion on the Raw brand. The next match features a very interesting group of women in which we saw a trios match between Sasha Banks, Bayley, and Natalya take on the Riott Squad, featuring Ruby Riott, Sarah Logan, and Liv Morgan. We'll quickly discuss Bayley first, as her name has come up a few times already. She was the ringleader of Damage Control until the group turned heel on her and kicked her out, but along the way she picked up yet another WWE Championship to her name and has always been a presence in the main event scene. Currently she's on the Raw brand, and as of this week finds herself in a feud with the woman who took her out of having a match at WrestleMania, Becky Lynch. This feud will be over the Women's Intercontinental Championship, giving this new title a big rub with two future Hall of Famers feuding over it. Bayley's in-ring best friend and real-life best friend Sasha Banks was also in this match. We mentioned her a few times already as well. Her current story has her on a collision course with timeless Toni Storm in AEW, and before she gets to All In, the now named CEO Mercedes Moné is in belt collector mode as she is currently holding 5 championships. Rev Pro's Undisputed British Women's Championship, the Queen of Southside Championship, EWA Women's Championship, the AEW TBS Championship, and literally just last night as of this recording became the CMLL Women's World Champion. Could she become an AEW double champion at All In and be the first woman to hold the TBS and World Championship at the same time? Who knows, but either way, Mercedes is at the top of her game right now. Their partner Natalya hasn't been quite as fortunate to have a championship resume as great as Mercedes or even Bayley's. Though Natalya is a former champion in her own right, she is on the downswing of her career. Though her main roster appearances are generally limited to backstage segments with the Alpha Academy alongside Maxine Dupree, she has also been able to wrestle with Game Changer Wrestling as a part of Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, showing that she can still go in the ring. But Natty nowadays is spending most of her time developing current and future professional wrestlers at a wrestling school with her husband, TJ Wilson, better known to longtime wrestling fans as Tyson Kidd. All 3 of their opponents are currently not wrestling, and not entirely because they chose to. Let's start with the happiest reason one of them isn't. Ruby Riott, now wrestling as Ruby Soho in AEW, has been out for some time as she was pregnant and has since given birth to a daughter with fellow AEW wrestler and husband, Angelo Parker. Whether she makes a return or not is still to be seen, but she's still currently signed to AEW. Sarah Logan most recently was with WWE under a new gimmick known as Valhalla. She was recently released, but prior to that wrestled extremely seldomly. With her release, she made a long post on her Instagram essentially alluding to retiring and focusing on her family. And lastly, Liv Morgan, one of WWE's most important members of the female roster. You may be wondering, if you happen to miss Raw earlier this week, why is Liv categorized as not wrestling? Well, in a seemingly normal spot, as you can see here, Liv Morgan suffered a shoulder injury right at the beginning of her match with Kairi Sane, who we will talk about in just a moment. It is reported that Liv will need surgery to repair her shoulder and could be out for the rest of the year. She would have likely been one of the very few women to wrestle on both Evolution shows, but will miss it this time around. When she got hurt, she was and technically still is one half of the women's tag team champions. Our next match, as we already noted, featured Kairi Sane and Shayna Baszler in a match for the NXT Women's Championship. This was also a rematch from the prior year's Mae Young Classic final. Kairi came into the match as champion and has had a career in WWE that I think is not befitting of her skill level so far. Her initial run ended during the pandemic, which did include time as the NXT Women's Champion, as well as time as one half of the Tag Team Champions with Asuka. Since her return in 2023 to WWE, she has been aligned with Damage Control, which included a second Tag Team title reign with Asuka, and she was aligned with Damage Control until the group ceased to exist, with several injuries to its member in the last year or so. But here's a disgusting fact that I only just found out recently. You know how we talked about Liv's injury this week on Raw against Kairi? Well, a few weeks prior to that match, they had their first one-on-one encounter, which saw Kairi beating Liv. This win was the first singles victory for Kairi Sane on WWE television since July of 2020. She's on a streak of sorts now, as she took down Liv's tag team partner Raquel Rodriguez the following week, and the aforementioned match with Liv earlier this week, technically giving Kairi another win and a 3-match singles winning streak. As for Shayna Baszler, she very much had a start and stop run in her entire time in WWE. She had a decent career in the world of mixed martial arts and was given a prominent role through her time in NXT. She won the title twice, including to this date the second longest reign in that title's history at 416 days, and was even involved in the first ever women's War Games match. Her time on the main roster, however, was less glorious, though she did hold tag team gold several times, including with Ronda Rousey when they unified the women's and NXT tag team titles. She also beat Ronda in her last match with WWE. Alongside Sonya Deville and Zoe Stark, they formed the aforementioned Pure Fusion Collective, and alongside Sonya would also be released this year, as Shayna's run with the company ended in May of 2025. Retrospectively, and even in the moment, these final two matches should have been swapped, but alas, they weren't. The SmackDown Women's Championship was on the line as Becky Lynch was defending her title against Charlotte Flair. We've briefly discussed both already, but since we've talked about Becky more, let's just conclude her portion of the story. Becky made her long-awaited return at this year's WrestleMania, replacing the injured Bayley and filling in as Lyra Valkyria's tag team partner against Judgment Day's Liv and Raquel. They won the tag team titles that night, but would go on to lose them right back to Liv and Raquel the following night on Raw. Though she returned as a babyface, Becky viciously attacked Lyra after this match and revealed that she was the one who took out Bayley. Lyra also happened to be Intercontinental Champion at that time, and while she would successfully defend it once against Becky, she wasn't so lucky the next time, as WWE's current Intercontinental Champion is Becky Lynch. As for Becky's opponent at Evolution, Charlotte, she is far and away the most decorated woman in professional wrestling history. A 14-time world champion, 16 if we're going to count NXT, former tag team champion, and 2-time Royal Rumble winner, including this year, Charlotte has done it all. Charlotte fell short of recapturing gold at WrestleMania in a losing effort this year against Tiffany Stratton. Since then, Charlotte failed to qualify for both the Money in the Bank and Queen of the Ring in her two most recent matches over on the SmackDown brand. Safe to say, Charlotte is currently in the twilight of her career, but certainly still has the capability to put on great matches when the moment calls for it. And finally, we come to our Evolution main event. For Raw's Women's Championship, as champion Ronda Rousey defends against Nikki Bella with Brie in her corner. Many things have been said about Ronda and her wrestling career, but one thing needs to be made very clear, especially at this moment in time. Despite me saying just moments ago Becky and Charlotte should have been in the spot, Ronda was a big deal. Ronda was UFC's biggest star for quite some time, and WWE getting her was a huge coup. It wasn't just a UFC star past their prime wanting to make some easy money. This was someone who was identifiably a wrestling fan, even borrowing Roddy Piper's nickname for herself. Ronda was the women's division's version of Brock Lesnar, and honestly, it worked, especially around this time. The women's revolution in WWE owes a lot to Ronda Rousey for legitimizing the women's division. They could have done so without her, but she certainly helped speed up the process quite a bit, which even got the women their first ever main event at WrestleMania. As for Ronda's current whereabouts, she's officially retired from wrestling and of course MMA, and as we touched on already, had her final WWE match with Shayna Baszler, which saw Ronda being submitted for the first and only time. She's largely stayed out of the spotlight since retiring, but that hasn't stopped people from speculating she may be involved in the second Evolution pay-per-view. Her opponent Nikki Bella, however, has begun to make the rounds in pro wrestling once again. Before we get there, it's important to note Nikki's contributions to pro wrestling as well. I know, I said Becky and Charlotte deserve the main event spot, and all I've done is put over Ronda and Nikki, but it's only fair to explain why they were put in this position in the first place. Nikki and her sister Brie may have never been accused of being great pro wrestlers, but they did lay the groundwork for women's wrestling in WWE to truly be noticed. Total Divas and by extension Total Bellas were smash hits for WWE and were an integral part in getting WWE to take their women's roster seriously. The female audience loved the Bellas and wanted to see them succeed and get their time in the ring, and WWE listened to their audience and made it happen. Without Total Divas, who knows where WWE's women's division sits today? I like to think it would be more or less the same, but the Bellas were just as big of a reason for Evolution existing as anyone else on the roster at the time. Unlike Ronda, however, Nikki appears to be on the fast track to being included in the second edition of Evolution, as she made an appearance on Raw just in the last couple weeks. She was supposed to appear just a few days ago again on Raw to follow up being attacked by Liv Morgan last week, but Liv's injury nixed those plans and Nikki was pulled from TV. Not sure the route they take getting Nikki and potentially Brie involved in Evolution 2, which seemed to head towards a tag team match with Liv and Raquel. Either way, I fully expect Nikki and potentially Brie to be involved in Evolution 2. And that wraps up where the entire card of the first WWE Evolution pay-per-view are at today. I was honestly surprised how little movement from WWE to AEW there was on this card, as I figured we would see more names from AEW, but either way, there are several names on this first card that I wouldn't mind being in the mix again for the second show. If you watched this pay-per-view, what was your favorite match? Let me know in the comment section down below, and let me know what you are looking forward to with Evolution 2 taking place July 13th, 2025. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button so more wrestling fans can find this video just like you did. And if you want to see more videos like this, consider subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date when we drop more content. Pardon the wrestling, but I am Bryan, and thank you for watching.